Welcome to Vampire Divorce with Attorney Clarke Young.
Hey everyone, welcome into an all-new episode of Vampire Divorce with Attorney Clarke Young. I am your host, Mike Leon. Clarke here is a seasoned family law attorney, consultant, and expert witness who has handled some of the most complex custody cases in California and beyond. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about what happens when psychiatric medications start driving behavior, conflict, and decisions into a divorce. Clarke, it's good to see you as always, and I love your expertise on these topics. So let me ask you at a high level here, what patterns do you see when medications start influencing behavior, communication, or even judgment in a family law case?
First, Mike, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Medications play a central role in most of the cases that I litigate. It is a rare case where medications and other addictive personality issues don't come into play. I can't even think of a case I've had where there has been some sort of addictive behavior. So, and that's really part of when you're talking about borderlines, the vampire divorce situation. Borderlines are notorious for having impulse control issues and you would almost say codependency, if you will, on some sort of addictive behavior or another. So it runs the whole gauntlet of all the things you know. It's the alcohol abuse, it's the prescription drug abuse, it's the illegal substance abuse, it's food binging addictions, it's sex addictions is a big one. There are so many borderlines are very distracted by, to be polite about it, addicted to sex. So in all these cases, you are always faced with the misuse of a substance or sex or binge spending or some other addictive behavior as being something that the court can relate to. And this is often a side road or a back door, if you will, into helping the court see what is really going on behind the scenes, behind closed doors. Because again, whether it's a borderline, a narcissist, or even a normal range parent who has some addiction issues, you're going to discuss those at length and document them very carefully. For example, I've had cases where the borderline, the suspected borderline, I'll say in that case, because she wasn't diagnosed, we didn't get that far, we didn't have to. She definitely had a sex addiction, and she kept it hidden from her husband for many years. But when that finally came out, it did play into how the case got resolved. And so there are other cases where you have to document and discover through formal discovery all of the prescription medications that the other person is taking. Then you need to subpoena expert witnesses who can discuss how those medications have side effects. And you can read about this online. I don't need to get into details, but there's a lot of prescription medications that the the AMA, the MDs, if you will, are prescribing. And I don't think they help people understand fully the consequences and downstream effects on their behavior when they take a prescription that treats one symptom, but then it creates more symptoms that require different medications, and those medications have side effects. And before you know it, people are taking cocktails, and they all go into court and say, "Oh, but the doctor prescribed it." Well, may have prescribed it, but the behaviors and the spiral down that these people go through as a result of the inappropriate prescriptions that they're taking, or the unsupervised, I should say, or unevaluated prescriptions they're taking is really quite tragic. And it has terrible effects on the children and in turn, custody.
Yeah. So let's expand on that a little bit more. Just looking at the drugs, antidepressants in isolation, because you just mentioned about no doctor can truly fully predict like how the drug's going to affect somebody. So how does that uncertainty complicate these custody disputes?
Well, first of all, you're you're going to have one parent identify correctly or incorrectly that the other parent's behavior is not consistent with who they know them to be historically. Now, that's a very important baseline to establish. Uh, in a hypothetical now, let's say that my client is the one who is been taking prescription medications because they've been in a relationship with a borderline spouse for so long that they do have PTSD, they do suffer anxiety disorders, and they are somewhat depressed. So they go to an MD rather than a psychotherapist where they should be, who will help them. A psychotherapist is somebody who has a PhD in psychology, who in a clinical setting will give them individual therapy to help them deal with the relational problems they're having with the borderline, because borderline personality disorder is basically a relational problem, not a medical problem in the BPD. Sure, when you're angry or you're sad or you're happy, there are biochemical reactions that happen in your brain, but that doesn't mean that you have that borderline personality disorder and all the antics that they engage in and all the behavioral issues they have are genetic. That was a big debate we've had for a while, nature, nurture. Well, there may be a 2-5% nature, DNA genetic predisposition to be a BPD, but I think the overwhelming consensus in the psychological community and the psychiatric community is that it's a relational issue. I'm going to digress. I'm going to go off topic here and say we should come back and talk about why is it that psychiatrists and psychologists want to say that borderline personality disorder, on the one hand, is a physiological medical condition versus a relational one. So I'm going to put that on the side for the second. But going back to the prescriptions, once in this hypothetical, I have a client. I do know that his behavior is abnormal and is really, in some cases, extremely abnormal. I mean, just out of control behavior. And then you need to find someone who can come in and testify that the medications he's been taking are the cause of that. And therefore, once they are weaned off or go cold turkey off of a medication, miraculously, the the symptomatic behaviors go away and their normal behavior returns. On the other hand, if it's the borderline, the likelihood that a borderline is going to be open-minded and say that their behaviors are anything other than perfect, they think their behaviors are wonderful. They think they're perfect, which is part of the borderline mystique, if you will.
Yeah.
It's hard to, you just have to document their behavior because they're not going to get into therapy.
Yeah.
The therapy just doesn't work with borderlines.
Yeah.
There's no cure for borderline personality disorder. And that's an important thing for judges and attorneys and healthcare professionals to accept and understand.
Yeah. Clarke, let me stay on the documenting part here. So the parent's behavior suddenly starts changing, whether it be outbursts, maybe depression, suicidal talk. So how would you advise that other parent that's listening to this right now? How should they document those concerns without crossing into, the medical diagnosis part of this?
Well, it's important that they do document it, even if there's say a psychological evaluation going on, or there's other tests and other experts involved, because all of the things that the normal range parent is documenting are going to be put into originally, as I mentioned in other episodes, what I call a day in the life declaration, where you've described all these behaviors and the abuse and the lack of respect, on and on. Those documents are going to go to the child custody evaluator. the child's therapist, probably family members, probably anybody who is having anyone in the child's world, because you have to educate people in the child's world about what the source of the child's problem is. I mean, this pathogenic behavior in the child isn't just coming up normally. It doesn't happen in normal children. Normal children develop normally. So if you're having pathogenic symptoms in a child, you know it's coming from a pathogenic parent or child care provider of some kind. So that abnormal behavior, and just documenting the fact that they are on medications or they are taking non-prescription drugs, illegal substances. This happens too. So all you can do is document that the best you can. Can you videotape or take pictures of the medication if you're still in the relationship? If you haven't separated yet, sure, that's the best time to do it. But if you're already separated and it's been a year or so, you won't really have access to a lot of that information unless you do formal discovery. And to do that, you have to know who's prescribing, which doctor is prescribing medications to this person, because the borderline is not going to disclose that even under formal discovery requests.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the experts. What role can those expert witnesses, maybe a psychiatrist, can they play in helping the court kind of separate the chemical effects from the character issues?
This is a tricky question, and I don't want to get into the weeds on this too much. Most psychologists, all psychologists are MDs, they're medical doctors. So they've been to medical school. Most of their programming in medical school and their courses of study have been centered on prescription medication as a way of treating various ailments. They are particularly not skilled in identifying psychological issues from a PhD, a psychotherapist, that sort of point of view. All of the instruments that psychologists use to evaluate borderlines and to document it and to diagnose it, as well as other possible comorbidities, are usually done by psychotherapists. Even though, ironically, it's the American Psychological Association that developed the DSM-4, the DSM document for diagnosing. So there's a tug and a pull going on within the mental health community about whose territory are we in. To be more specific, you want to hire one of the very few but well-qualified psychiatrists, MDs, familiar with pharmacology, or a pharmacologist who can tell you about how these prescription medications and other illegal substances will affect behavior and may have affected this person's behavior if they just did a records review, or if they actually evaluated this person, then they are qualified to testify about the effects that this medication is having on this particular individual. That's important because some medications affect different people differently. It's not, one size fits all. That's why, the black box or the description of side effects on every medication goes on for, 3 miles. I mean, they're on forever because they're trying to describe how this medication doesn't work with some individuals, but it might work with others and not have side effects. So that's really where you're getting these experts involved on the medication side.
Clarke, what mistakes have you seen parents make when they try to handle these type of situations on their own without a qualified expert or some type of legal strategy from someone like yourself?
Well, that answer is quite short and simple. It is a mistake, and it turns out the judge will not give any weight to their testimony because they're not experts. And if they haven't gotten the experts lined up and they can't afford to have the experts lined up, then the court just basically plays three monkeys and ignores it unless it's so obvious that you've got someone who's acted out in a way where they're committing criminal acts or something. Short of that, you're not going to have much luck trying to document medication abuse on your own.
Yeah.
It won't happen.
Well, then for the listener that's listening to this right now, that's going through, a divorce where psychiatric medication is a major factor in this, what are some guiding principles? What would you want to leave them with in terms of what they should follow as they build their team and the approach to the court?
All right, so this is a two-pronged answer. One is that we're now talking about a case that most people can't afford. So for those people, I'm so sorry to say it, but your children or child are probably doomed. You can't play. This is a pay-to-play game, and when you start hiring experts, you're not talking about $2,000 or $5,000. You're talking 20, 25, or 30, or 60 in Southern California, maybe lower in rural areas, but in major metropolitan areas, you're talking megabucks. So that's prong one. Prong two is, how do you find these people? Well, you've got to use your AI programs. You've got to get referrals. You've got to beat the pavement. You've got to interview them. You've got to talk to them. And you have to be wary of the charlatans who tell you they have all this experience and they know borderline personality disorder, or they know about medications and they've done a lot of things. And it turns out that they're quacks, basically. So you have to be very careful when you vet these people. And very likely, depending upon where you live, you may not have anybody locally, and you may be flying somebody in to testify, which again runs up the expenses astronomically. I mean, exponentially. It's just crazy.
Clarke, thank you as always for the time, the insights, the analysis. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it too.
And that's it for today's episode of Vampire Divorce with Attorney Clarke Young. If you want to reach out to Clarke and connect with him, do me a favor, visit clarkeyoung.com today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review and comment, or share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Mike Leon. We will see everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.